How's it going? I woke up this morning, and maybe you did what I did. I looked outside, and I thought, take that, flies. You had a good run. Now it's over. A large portion of my life is dedicated to battling flies. And so I don't know. It was birthday week at our house, and that's a big deal. We have both my kids had birthdays this week. My little boy turned 10 on Tuesday, and Papa got him flying lessons, and so we went up in a little plane on Tuesday. My little girl turned 7 on Saturday, and so they had a little princess party. Let me tell you what I've learned since you've seen me last. I would rather sit in the back seat of an airplane being flown by a 10-year-old than be a passenger on the emotional roller coaster driven by a bunch of 7-year-olds. I can't tell you how happy I am just to be back on solid footing. The highlight of my week, I got a root canal on Wednesday. So, you ever had weeks like that? Anyway. It's a good week. It's fine. I'm fine. Lacey got back from Arizona. If you're thinking that I look more well taken care of, thank God she returned. It's been a week. Anyway, there's actually more. There's like this whole truck driving thing. Anyway. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do what I'm going to ask you to do, and that is just sort of like push pause on the week. And we've been going through this. We've been going through the question of what could be. And what could be is a funny question because I think to begin with, the reaction has been, do we want to opt in to what could be in our lives, or do we just kind of want to sit back and wait? And I'll tell you, the danger of sitting back and waiting is that we think that things will stay the same if we don't choose for them to change. So when the pastor stands up at church and goes, hey, let's think about what it would be like, what could be, it's easy to get sort of lulled into this like, yeah, we'll see, maybe. I'm not sure if I'm ready for that. The truth is, life changes. Everything changes. You change. You will age. You're going to get older. Life isn't going to be the same in 10 years as it is now. So when I challenge us, myself included, with let's lean into what could be, what I'm saying is let's be more intentional about what life will look like when we get there. When we reach that next plateau, when we reach that next phase, the Bible tells us that if we begin to apply what the Word says, even in moments of discomfort, that our life will be more fulfilled when we get there. So you see the difference between do you want it or not? My belief is we're getting to choose, do I want to believe what the Bible says, or do I want to just see what happens should I get there with no preparation? You guys follow me? So, things like, what would my life look like if I had a bigger faith? And everybody's, oh, yeah, that'd be great. Hang on. You know how your faith gets bigger? It's not in moments where you have all the answers. See, we want to be I want to be somebody who's got bigger faith, but we don't always want to be the person who gets exposed to the frustration that creates it. I want to be more generous. Nobody wants to be more generous. That goes the opposite. We want to have more. Nobody wants to be more generous, but the Bible says that when we learn to deal in generosity, our life becomes more fulfilled. So there's going to be this phase of life. Listen, you will have to choose it. You will have to choose to begin to engage. Otherwise, what you're saying is everybody ends up there. And what we know about life is not everyone ends up in a good place. At some point, if you want better for your life, you're going to have to choose the necessary steps. You can't just throw it into neutral. You've got to engage. You've got to start. You've got to throw it into gear. I said in the first service, you've got to engage the clutch, and everybody under 20 went. It's this thing that us grandpas used to do when we were kids, when we were driving. But somewhere along the line, our spiritual walk has to transition from neutral to active. We've got to activate. We've got to engage because the things in the Word don't just happen. So how often is it, myself included, how often is it we just sort of casually float through life waiting any minute that God's going to do the thing that he's going to do? And then he has a moment where he goes, no, stop, wake up. You've got to begin to choose it, and a lot of times we choose it into discomfort. So it's going to change. We're going to have to choose it. And when we choose it, a lot of times it creates discomfort. And now we're getting into my childhood. You didn't know that, but let me explain what I'm talking about. I was raised in a not weird, it runs in cycles, but I was raised in an interesting phase of church belief. It was the phase, I'm going to see some people laughing, and I will know you were raised in this same phase, where the preacher would always tell you that the apocalypse is just around the corner. You will be tortured for your faith. And imagine being an 8-year-old kid, and you're like, what kind? By who? Like, I just knew, as a kid, we were going to be invaded because the church had gotten so weak and our faith was so weak, and this is what we were taught. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what my faith would look like in the face of adversity. In fact, it worried me. It worried me because you heard it all the time. Be ready. What would you do? And then you hear stories like this. I'm going to read it to you. Acts chapter 14, verse 19. It says, Then some Jews from Antioch and Iconium came and won over the crowd, and they stoned Paul and dragged him outside the city, thinking he was dead. So here's what Paul was doing. He was preaching. He was giving away the word. This is what he was doing. He was giving away the word, the life-giving word, to the benefit of those who heard it. He wasn't building an empire. He wasn't getting too rich. He wasn't stealing. He was giving away. And for his giving away, they threw rocks at him until they thought he was dead. And then they drug him outside the city. But after the disciples gathered around him, he got up and went back to the city the next day. And the next day, he and Barnabas left for Derbe. I have to be careful because I'm going to say the words, Paul got stoned. And I live in Oregon. I want to clarify. This is a very important clarification. Getting stoned in the Bible was much different. Okay? I know that you know that, but it bears repeating. Paul had rocks thrown at him for his faith until he was unconscious. The next day, he got up and he went right back to work the next day. And then it says, they preached the gospel in that city and won a large number of disciples. Then they returned to Lystra, Iconium, and Antioch, strengthening the disciples and encouraging them to remain true to the faith. They said this. This is faith in the face of adversity. This is where I used to kind of have moments of doubt. Of like, I don't know. They said this. We must go through many hardships to enter the kingdom of God. This is just what was expected. They just expected that if they were going to get where they were going, they were going to have to travel through difficulty. These are the sort of stories that always cause me to go, I don't know what I would do. I don't know if I have what it takes. No one knows if they have what it takes. One of my biggest pet peeves is when someone speaks with confidence about something they know nothing about. Anybody else? I'll tell you what I do. I'm like, no. If you've never done it, shut up. About anything. What would I do in the face of persecution? What would I do if my faith was costing me the way that Paul's faith was costing him? And the Bible tells us we should expect difficulty. So it's not like, hey, maybe we're going to, have the winning ticket and we're just going to skip adversity altogether. The Bible warns us. It says, blessed is those who persevere under trial, because having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life. I don't like that verse because it promises me. And then it gets worse. Listen to this in John chapter 16, 33, it says, I have told you these things, as Jesus. I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have, does anybody know this verse? What? Trials, troubles, tribulations. There's a lot of different interpretations, but Jesus says, I'm telling you these things because you will face difficulties. And when I'm a child, it was wired into me. When I think difficulties, I think of rocks flying at my face. I'm like, I'm going to face that? What will I do? We're getting really quiet because I haven't given you the answer, because what I can see in your face is like, are we going to have rocks thrown in our face? I don't think so. But I don't know, if I'm facing adversity, I don't know what the character of my faith would look like. Best case scenario would be this, is that I'm able to choose what is right, not what is easy. That's what I hope. I hope, best case scenario, that when the rubber meets the road, I would love to think best case scenario that my faith allows me to choose what is right, not what is easy. But But I've always, for years, as a young person, I struggled with doubt of what I would do in that moment. Because there's a difference between working through difficulty and choosing difficulty. I think I've got a pretty high pain tolerance, but I hate choosing pain. I mentioned I got a root canal. I hate going to the dentist. It's not just the pain, it's the invasion. It's all of it. I would almost rather just lose teeth. Now, once I'm in there and I'm in the middle of it, that's different because I'm not going to throw a fit and be a little baby about it. But there's a difference between getting through difficulty and choosing difficulty. Are you with me? Bible says you're going to have moments where you're faced with, do I lean into the thing that I believe to be right, or do I just drift towards what I believe to be easy? Things like, I made a list. Giving sacrificially. You're like, here we go, it's a money sermon. Ha, it's a trap. It's not about money at all. There are times where the Lord is going to challenge you to give sacrificially. So if you're trying to figure out how it benefits you, that is not the definition of sacrificial, is it? Giving at your own expense, and you're like, well, how much? I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about what if we were to become people who in a moment where we're right and someone else is wrong, begin to sacrificially give grace instead of just pounding the grace drum for our own consumption. We love grace when it's being given to us, but then when we're challenged to give grace away, we're like, well, now, I just don't know if it's good for them. We can come up with 1,000 different excuses. I'm saying sacrificially give grace. What about if we sacrificially give up our plans? So many times, I'm like, but God, I wanted that. And you're opening the doors for this. And if I don't come to terms with the fact that in my life I will face moments of sacrificial giving, if I don't start to square that away, because again, I want to know what my faith looks like in moments of adversity. There's a lot of ways to look at that, and for the sake of time, I'm going to keep going. But one of the curses of being in leadership, generally, and I'm sure there's exceptions, is that we carry a certain level of social awareness. I think most good leaders, hopefully I will be one someday, carry a certain level of social awareness. It's the thing that makes people watching in airports so much fun. You just kind of get an eye for things that stand out. One of my favorite things to do is watch people with no social awareness. I'm not being judgy. You know what I'm talking about. When someone just misses all the social cues and you're like, keep going. But I've wondered of like in a moment where it's reckless abandon pursuing Jesus and let me read you a story. Here's the background. Luke chapter 8, verse 43, this is the verse. It says, and a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. Because of her condition, she was considered socially unclean. She couldn't touch anything. Anything that she touched was considered unclean. She couldn't go through a crowd of people. That was just the rules. And it says that Jesus is going by, and she not only ignores all the social boundaries, she ignores the fact that everybody she's touching on the way to Jesus, she is ignoring so much of the things that make me cringe. Nobody wants to be humiliated in public. Nobody wants to be the one that is like the butt of the jokes. Nobody wants to be the last person to know. And she is crawling through the crowd to touch the hem of Jesus' garment, which socially would have said she was making Jesus unclean, but the word says that's not how it works, that it was reversed. So then again, faith in the face of adversity, I've wondered, do I have what it takes to just go reckless abandon pursuing Jesus no matter what people think? Because as a kid in youth group, we were told, like, if you don't get up here and dance around like a maniac, now you're just getting into my own little personal stuff. That's not, but I don't know. I don't know if I have in a moment of pursuit, do I have what it takes? And so it says that Jesus said, who touched me? And he healed her. And I think I've always carried this guilt. And because I've never been in that situation, I've assumed I wouldn't perform up to the standard. And I don't even believe in performance-based faith. That's not what I'm saying. But But I don't know. I know that people have it a lot harder than me. I know that there are people who have a life a lot harder than me. I know there are people who've stared down the face of gunmen. I know there are people that are facing illnesses. I know that there's persecution that I haven't suffered. We are first world problems. And I'm aware of that. And so when I hear people that are actually suffering, I do. And I think probably if you're being honest, you do. You have this moment of like, I don't know. I don't know what I would do in those moments. Would I get up and go on after having rocks thrown at me? Or could I just ignore every cue? I don't know. So here's what happened in my life. A few years ago, I had this is not for the sake of sympathy, quite the opposite, but I had a really bad tooth abscess, and it was abscessed into the bone, and I looked like a dog that got bit by a snake. And I'll tell you, I've got a high pain tolerance. I was raised with it, but there does come a limit. And I couldn't lay down. I couldn't stand up. I couldn't sit still. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever experienced the kind of pain that you're just clenched the whole time. And I had my hand on it, and all I could do was I was just pacing around the living room. I had an appointment the next day, and I was just trying to get through it. And I tried everything. I tried sleeping. That didn't work. I tried reading. That didn't work. I tried complaining. Nothing. All of it, everything I knew to do. And I started praying, and I was praying. And I mean, listen, I had no other option. That was it. And I get why circus animals eat their trainers over tooth abscesses now. I get it. It's enraging. But I'm walking around and I'm praying, and then I was praying a little bit more, and I was like, here's the conversation I was having with God. I'm like, God, I know that you heal people, and I know that you could heal me, and I'm not trying to be a sissy about this, but yeah, and my real faith prayer, if you want to, cool. If not, that's okay. And about 30 minutes into it, something happened and something changed. And here's what it was, and I'm just going to tell it to you the way that it happened, is that it's like God just started showing me, like, wait a minute. You have always struggled with deep, serious, heartfelt, drawn out prayer. I've always have. It's just not like I get distracted. I mean, I'll admit, like some people, they can just pray for hours. Me, this is a true story. When I was about 4 years old, we were saying our family prayers in our home, and we were on our knees around our bed, and I was praying, and I got distracted, and it wasn't long until I forgot we were praying, and I started singing Jeremiah Was a Bullfrog as a 4-year-old. True story. My dad's like, hey, it's just, so I've always wondered, like, do I have, but when I had no other choice, I started praying in a way that I didn't know that I could pray. And then I had this moment. It was encouragement. This encouragement of, like, imagine if you could learn to pray like this over things that mattered. What if you started praying for the lost and for the church and for the future and for your family? And all of a sudden it was this encouragement that said, you are capable of so much more than you think. You think that you're here. You're actually capable of up here. And it changed. It was so real for me that my prayer in a moment changed to, God, don't take this away. If you need to make it worse. I didn't know this was me. I didn't know that I could do this. And my heart changed. When the pain was so severe that I had no other choice, what it did is it drove me further than I thought I could go. Let me explain to you why I'm telling you this story. Here's what I believe to be miraculous about this story is that God showed me this, is that not all adversity looks the same. I think my whole life I had this concern of, like, what if hard times hit, what would happen? But I know us. I know this group of people. I know this community. I know this culture. We're tough people. Pain is not the thing that breaks people like us. Being bullied by somebody is not what breaks. Being manipulated, being desperate. Listen, we are people that go the extra mile, and I couldn't have told you this with confidence had I not experienced it myself. You are tougher than you think. And you've got enough of the word in your spirit that really, in reality, adversity is not what we should be the most afraid of. I know us. I know people who have cut the tips of their fingers off and finished working that day. Tough is not our issue. Weak is not our issue. Our adversity is going to look different. And if we know what it looks like, then what I think is this, is that we are all dealing with adversity. We just may not know it. I want to draw a circle around the word adversity for a second. And this isn't a definition, but when I say adversity, I mean circumstances that push us away from God. Because like if somebody's throwing rocks at you, that seems like that would want to push you away from God. If I'm socially having to overcome all these boundaries, that's kind of adversity that kind of want to usher you away from God. But here's what I know about Paul. Paul had given up everything. Paul had nothing left. He had sacrificed a high position for a low position. And I'm sure in the moments as he's waking up, see, this is 2018, when he's waking up from being stoned, don't. But as he's waking up from being almost beat to death, I'm sure that Paul's reaction wasn't, I love this. But his reaction was, what else can I do? I have nothing left. This is the only option I've got. The woman crawling through the crowd, the Bible says that she had spent everything that she had. She had gone to every doctor. Nobody could help her. She had nothing left. Can I tell you something? You will do in moments of adversity. Just trust me. You are capable of doing more than you think. You know what you would do if you were in Paul's situation? The same thing. I believe that about you guys. I believe that about us. I believe that as a group is that if we were facing real adversity, not that we choose it, not that we want it, but if we found ourselves in that situation, we would find a new depth of spirit that we didn't even know we had. So the adversity that we're going to battle through is not going to look like difficulty or bullying, because that would bring out better in us, not worse. Are you guys tracking with me? But if we're trying to figure out what will the adversity look like, the circumstances that begin to separate us from Jesus, it will look different. Let me keep going. Matthew chapter 19, verse 22, it says that this young man comes to Jesus and he goes, what must I do? He says, I do this for me, I do this for me, I do this for me, I do this for me. And Jesus recognizes that the rich young ruler, his focus was on himself, not those around him. He hadn't realized what could be. He was actually, if you read the story, he was speaking life to the rich young ruler. He says, when you become obsessed with loving the people that are around you and quit being obsessed with loving yourself, you're going to find more of you than you knew existed. When he says, give your things away, he's not challenging him to become poor because he's rich. It's not a punishment for being rich. He says, it's not what you have, it's how you're holding on to them. If you would become obsessed with loving the people around you, you wouldn't believe what would happen. And then this is where it comes clear to me, is that the rich young ruler reached a point where he was facing adversity. Remember, we're asking, what does our faith look like in moments of adversity? This is what adversity looked like. It says this. It says, when the man heard this, he went away sad. Why? Because he had so many other choices. Actually, it says he had great wealth. But because of his wealth, his adversity, this is important to catch. His adversity was not desperation. His adversity was not desolation. His adversity was not being robbed of every other choice. His adversity was dressed in opportunity. He looked at Jesus and he began to compare. And he compared Jesus with all of the other opportunities that he had. And Jesus didn't quite measure up. He said, I would love that, but I got some other things going. We don't think of wealth as adversity. If you're like, well, I'm not rich. Do you realize that our poorest live better than kings lived 100 years ago? Nobody likes to be called rich, especially not rich people, but we are wealthy beyond what we could understand. And I think the problem is we always think of adversity as what happens if we lose it. I'm going to say this. It's possible that our adversity is what happens if we try to live for God and we never lose our comfort. Listen, This is not a you can't be wealthy and follow Jesus sermon. That's not the point of what I'm saying. I'm saying that we need to understand that sometimes adversity comes to us clothed as choices and opportunity. It says that he turned around and he left and he couldn't follow Jesus. Why? Because his circumstances, he couldn't overcome his circumstances. John chapter 6, verse 60, and I will admit this is just one of my personal favorites. I just like it a lot. Jesus has just fed the 5,000. He's got this huge following. His Instagram is blowing up. He's on the Explore bar. And then he walks on water. So, I mean, like, oh. And everybody's like, this is the guy. This is the guy that's going to get us out from under. Oh, this is him. And don't you know there's momentum and there's things happening and there's thousands of people. And the disciples are like, finally. And so he gathers them all up and he begins to teach. And you know what he starts talking about? The crucifixion. And the disciples are like, maybe not yet. Maybe not. Like, can we? We're kind of like on a this, and you're kind of bringing us onto one of these. So could you? And it says it's almost like I'm there. I have preached to people who are doing this. When you've offended someone, you know it. And slowly but surely, this momentum of this is great begins to shift, and people are like, we don't like this. Because when you have choices, you will become offended with the choice that you don't like. It says in verse 60, on hearing this, many of his disciples said, this is a hard teaching. Remember, I said, you're going to have to choose hard at some point. You can choose hard now or be a victim of hard later. Think of it physically. If you want to be better physically, if you want better performance out of your physical body, you don't just sit in the gym and go, this is good stuff. Look at the expert over there lifting all the weights. Woo, is it working? We're going to have to choose difficult. And it says they listened to Jesus and they compared Jesus with everything else and they go, we think that what you're saying is too hard. They were facing adversity. Aware his disciples were grumbling about this, Jesus says this, because I love Jesus so much. He says this, does this offend you? He knew. He knew. He looked out and he saw people like, I just don't think that's. Ask me how I know what that looks like. I know before they ever admit it, people are mad at me in this church. And Jesus doesn't back away from it. He goes, does this offend you? What he's doing is he is addressing their adversity. Are you going to be able to continue in the face of adversity? Can your faith continue in the face of adversity? It's hard, it's difficult, but let me tell you, if you're preparing for some apocalypse where people are throwing rocks at you, that's probably not what your adversity will look like. What your adversity will look like is when you come to church and you listen, you go, oh, that sounds really good, and then you do nothing. That it doesn't change you, that it doesn't break you, that it doesn't get through the crust that develops on your spirit. That is the adversity that we face. It says, from this time, many of his disciples turned back and no longer followed him. Listen, I don't know if I mean this. I think I do. I hope I do. I hope I mean this, but I think I would rather experience something real. Like I don't ever want to have a rock thrown in my face. But I think I would rather experience that than a life of just continually choosing easiest, most comfortable, and never experiencing who God created me to be, the depth of what I'm capable of doing, doing the difficult things so that I can see the lives of those around me begin to change, so that I can reach people for Jesus, and so the people that I've reached for Jesus begin to reach their friends for Jesus. I think I would rather catch a rock in the face than just be complacent my whole life. Because what I'm starting to realize is that our adversity is not in your face. It sneaks in slowly, and it looks like offense, or it looks like manipulation, or it looks like complacency, and we don't even realize that we're dying this slow death where Nothing bad happens because nothing happens. We listen and we like it, and we don't realize that actually adversity would be the best thing that could happen to us. Real adversity would bring out life that we didn't even know existed, and we're so concerned with avoiding adversity that we don't realize that we're losing to adversity, but in a different way. I want to encourage you with something. I believe it's true. I believe that you are stronger than you think you are. I believe the enemy has you convinced that you couldn't survive hard times. The enemy has come in and convinced you that you're not capable of the things that other people go through, and he has lied to you, and you have nothing to prove it because you've never had to face those sort of circumstances, and so you live with this abbreviated faith, not realizing that that would be the best thing that could happen in your faith, not the worst. I believe that spiritually, as you sit here in this church, and as we begin to grow, as you begin to ask what could be, you are growing in spiritual depth, you just don't see it. Listen to this. Matthew chapter 6, verse 21 says this. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. You're like, I knew it. It's a money sermon. It's not. If you want to know where your heart is, if you want to know the measurement of where your heart truly is, it's in difficult moments where there's what you should do and what you know to do and what you want to do. The voice that you listen to is the voice that has your heart. Look at where you spend the most of your thoughts. Look at where you spend the most of your resources. Look where you distribute the most amount of forgiveness, and that is where your heart truly is. So here's what we've got to do. Here's what we must do. Here's what we have to do. We have got to start inspecting our lives intentionally, and there's going to be homework this week. Yay. We've got to have a moment where we look at the face of something difficult or hard or uncomfortable and say yes to it. Here's the challenge. And you know why it's going to be hard to say yes to it? Because you're going to have 1,000 choices of other things to do. That's what adversity looks like, is when God begins to challenge you to something difficult, you start to resist and choose something else. That is our adversity. So here's what I wanted to ask. If you would do this, here's how we're going to do this as a body this week. My guess is you already got that one thing on your mind. I don't know what it is, but God is just so annoyingly faithful in moments like this to be like, I've been telling you. In a moment of difficulty, instead of saying, what would I do if I was looking down the barrel of a gun? Or what would I do if I was having rocks thrown at my face? Or what would I do if it... I'm going to ask you this. What will you do when you just know? When you just know that God's laying something on your heart. But here's the homework part. I want you to write down how you feel after doing something difficult. I already know what you're going to say. I already know what God's going to do in your life. You're going to have this big, deep breath moment that goes, I got to do this more. I got to do this more. Fast for a day. Take an entire 24-hour period and fast. And every time you think you're hungry, pray. You know, some people do that, but not by choice. See? You have a choice. What about if you started distributing grace at the same level you expect it? What about if you started to drop an offense because you were right and they were wrong? What if you begin to forgive somebody who was wrong and just let people off the hook? Moments that are difficult, and then on the heels of that, write down what happens, because in your spirit, something's going to happen, and it's this. Your spirit man is going to begin to celebrate that finally the flesh didn't get to make the decision. What you're going to realize is that we have been battling adversity and we didn't even know it. We've been so geared for the attack that comes this way that we haven't even seen the attack that's coming from this way. And that we as people, we cannot figure out, we cannot learn, we cannot observe, we cannot see what could be unless in moments that are difficult, we prepare ourselves to say yes. You know what I love about God? I would love to be more specific. I would love to tell you, go home and do specifically this. I'm not going to do it. I don't know what your thing is. Some people can fast for 24 hours. I don't know what they're made of, but good for them. Some people just do it like it's no big deal. It's not a huge commitment. For others, maybe you're just great at forgiveness. Maybe you just got such a grasp on what you've been forgiven of that you forgive freely. I don't know. I'm saying go lean into the hard ones. Whatever the difficult one is, whatever is that thing that you're not wanting to do, maybe you need to say sorry to somebody. Have you ever said sorry to somebody when they were wrong and you were right? That's fun. It just goes against our nature to say, and it's this. I'm sorry, but that's not doing it the hard way. That's doing it in a way that's virtue signaling. I want you to know how good I'm being by apologizing to you. I'm saying do something good for someone that is not to your own benefit. We have got to start exercising new muscles if we're going to figure out how to have faith in the face of adversity when we choose what is right instead of what is easy. I can't hardly make myself say it. I think I'd rather catch a rock in the face than live my whole life and then at the end just die. Having never done anything, having never accomplished anything, having never seen what was in there in moments of difficulty, I want to know. I want to know what God can do in my life. I want to know what I can accomplish. I want to know what a church could accomplish in an area that everybody else in the church business goes, why there? There's nobody that lives in Central Oregon. There's not enough people. I'm saying wait until you see what could be. But we can't get there if we are so excited about comfort and ease and complacency. We just can't do it. Something difficult this week, and I want you to write down with a pen and a piece of paper because this is 1994. Write down how you felt about doing something difficult and then put it somewhere that will remind you every day. You fight a battle of adversity daily, whether you see it or whether you don't. Let's pray. Lord, thank you for breakthroughs that I believe that are coming. For people who are going to begin to discover who they actually are. For potential that's going to begin to be realized. For lives that are going to be changed. God, for whatever it is that you're getting ready to do. Whatever it is that you're about to do, God, as you begin to prepare us for what could be. God, that we begin to lean into what's difficult. God, it's not the things, we don't take being bullied very well. It's not that somebody's going to come in and pressure us into walking away, but I think sometimes just this thought that we have a choice and that our choice is we choose what's easier. God, I think that's destroying the character of our faith. I think we need to look at the difficult things and say yes. What I believe we're going to find when we volunteer, how about this? When we volunteer to do something we don't want to do, what we're going to find is there are spiritual muscles that have just been laying dormant that need to be reactivated. God, it's a cool week for a baptism service, I think. It's a cool week to watch people say yes to those moments. Lord, give us a grace that covers us in these coming weeks and months and whatever it takes for us to learn how to say yes to the things that we think are difficult. Thank you in advance for the lives that will be changed because of it. I pray in Jesus' name, amen.